Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. My name is Jo Herbert-James. I work in the UK. I'm based in Wales. I work for Tearfund, a Christian charity working around the world, leading their theological work on the environment and economic sustainability. I'm also pursuing a PhD looking at the same topic. It is my pleasure to be hosting this flagship panel at the inaugural Youth-Led Solutions Summit and highlight the work of an amazing group of young leaders we have for you today who are taking climate action in their communities. Everyone in different part of the world and whose leadership, whose action-orientated approach looks different in their context. And we'll get to explore some of that. So let's get straight in. I'm going to introduce our panel before you get to hear from them. We have Simangele, and she is the co-founder of South African Youth Biodiversity Network and serves on the steering committee for a youth constituency in the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. We have Bertine, and she is an environmental studies student from the Marshall Islands and is currently taking environmental studies at the University in Washington State. We have Mathilde from Norway. She sits on the World YMCA Executive Committee, and she co-leads the creation of one of the first World YMCA environment initiatives aiming to advance the climate change agenda. We have Herman, and he's an English teacher as well as a volunteer with Chiang Mai YMCA in Thailand, who has been taking action on climate through YMCA Asia Pacific Alliance Green Ambassadors Programme. And finally, we have Ana-Luisa, and she is a young scientist, social entrepreneur, and founder and CEO of Safe Drinking Water for All, and based in Brazil. So I'm really excited about this panel. We have people from all over, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of what they've been up to and what they're doing in their own lives. So I'm going to ask them all a question, and I've asked them, you're not going to get the full story because we haven't got enough time, but my first question to all of you is, how did you first become passionate about the climate? And what were some of the first things you did to take action? And so first of all, I want to take that question to Simangele, if she would answer that one first.
Thank you so much for hosting me. I pointed this back when I was 14 years old in high school doing grade 7. I grew up in a rural town, always loved nature, but it was in the environmental club where a link was made between what I experienced and the changes in general and broader. And I started being active there by doing environmental awareness activities, picking up litter, and many other activities from the school environmental club. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Simangele. Bertine, I'm going to you next.
Thank you, Jo. How I got interested, it was like very recently in high school. I was also not invited, but I took part in a camp that was dedicated to teaching Marshallese students about the sort of impacts of climate change, of where we're from. And I was genuinely I was like, I've never even thought of this because, in our schools, we never really talk about it, despite the fact that we actually use all the resources of where we live. And so I wanted to learn more, and thus I got more interested in climate education and put myself in more initiatives surrounded around that.
Amazing, thank you. Mathilde.
Yeah, good question, Jo. Back, I remember I always like the other friends here. I always liked nature and being outside and everything, but just the interest for environment to me, it was I thought that you had to wanted to hug trees to care about environmental protection and everything. But then I learned about sustainable development, and this was before the Sustainable Development Goals and the whole agenda. And I was so eager to learn more, and then I really saw the light and Googled and figured out that the YMCA here in Norway had an advocacy group on working on environment and sustainable development. So that was my first experience.
Thank you. Herman, can you tell us next?
Okay, thank you very much. As I am a volunteer teacher, my first school was on the mountain, and I saw when I saw many people throw away the garbage and throw away the waste and burn the forest. I feel a little bit. I get mad. And so I try to find a way to help the green because I'm very into green color of the forest so much. That's why I want to save that green. So I try to find the information by myself, from the Google, from the new knowledge from the blog, to teach my student as much as I can. That's why I started from there.
Brilliant, thank you. And Ana-Luisa, what about yourself?
Well, for me, it was my experience that I cannot tell when I began, but since I was a kid, I like to play watching insects and trying to figure out how nature works. So it was pretty clear that I wanted to become a scientist. And when I was 15 at high school, I finally had my opportunity to work with water to try to solve a big issue in our world. And I just got so passionate about finally having this opportunity to become a scientist that since that age I never stopped to work with my product, and then the startup came up, and yeah, that's the reason of the story.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like I could ask you all so much more about what happened. So we've heard a little bit of where it started, and for some of these I'm going to ask what things look like today, what they're involved with today. So again, I'm going to start with Simangele.
Yeah, so I'm based in South Africa in a very beautiful part that is called Duba. I work for an NGO called Wild Oceans, and the Oceans Alive project. So I work with the communities around Simangele Wetland Park, doing environmental education, overseeing community engagement activities. So that includes engaging with the local leadership, politically, the traditional structures, and ensuring, the great success of the Oceans Alive project. It also includes running community beneficiation projects as we are looking to establish community hubs that are going to be resource centers, for example. So it's at a more local action level. That's what I'm currently doing. But at a more regional and international level, I'm currently chairing the Communications Task Force of the African CSO's Biodiversity Alliance. It's an alliance of African civil society organizations that have come together to influence the post-2020 global biodiversity framework and other policies in the CBD. But what is great is that because of the wealth of organizations, we're running campaigns on great ape tourism, on zoonosis, on all those other things. And then finally, what I'm going to mention is that I'm involved with the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, which is also the youth constituency to the CBD. So this involves arranging a lot of youth capacity building initiatives so that they understand the policy space, and then running consultation meetings where we say, these are discussions at a global level. This is where it comes from. This is the science behind it. What are your thoughts? And we combine that into reports and policy positions and submit it to the CBD itself and different governments. And basically, the South African Youth Biodiversity Network that you mentioned, that I co-founded, does the same, but at a national level. So yeah, this is what I'm up to currently. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want to ask you, Simangele, it sounds like you work with a huge amount of people, and there's lots of different people involved, lots of organizations and groups. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role that networking has played for you to get you to this point, and the different people you're working with, specifically on climate solutions? So it's not just you that gets yourself there, but what role does networking play?
Yeah, it plays a very big role, especially because, you know, environmental problems are not a one sector problem, right? It's not an issue of environmentalists. And also, in order to address it, you need to network with people in business. You need to, you know, interact with people in agriculture, with people in mining. So it does play a very big role, because you get to understand other people's perspectives and what is driving the activities that they are doing. And the more informed you are about other sectors and beyond those sectors, about other societal issues, then the most likely you'll be able to come with a solution that would be accepted to be implemented by different parties. So networking is playing a bigger role, because this issue is not just a conservationist environmental issue, but everyone's issue, and you need them at the table.
Great, thank you. That's so helpful. Ana-Luisa, I'm going to go to you next and just ask again a little snapshot of what it is you're working on today for most of the time.
Yeah, so I'm in Brazil. I'm a biotechnologist. And when I was 15, I started develop of a technology that's called Aqualuz, and it cleaned the water using just the sun energy. And at the age of 17, I founded the startup Safe Drinking Water for All, to not only improvement of Aqualuz, but to create other technology directly for water and sanitation problems. And so we have impacted more than 2,000 people since the last year, when we finally start to implement the technology after several of technical improvements. And so we are also launching another technology for sanitations and water issues.
Thank you, Anna. And gosh, that sounds amazing. And you're involved with so much. Okay, Herman, I'm going to come to you next. If you could give us a little snapshot of what you are involved with today.
Yes, right now, on the climate change, uh, now my school put the policies in my school to not only the student not only knows how to separate the waste only, but they know now we put the environment issues to every subject. For example, like a science and math subject, uh, we try to teach the student to know how to calculate, how to know the footprint like that. And we invite all the teachers to join these activities also. And we show how importance of the climate change activity to our boss. And now uh, our students, they understand and they know more about how important of the climate change. And we have taken the students to join many activities about the climate change with the local community also.
That's such a great approach, and to see that getting lots of other people on board, because surely the other educators need to be on board with that. Can you tell us a little bit, how do you bring others to the table? How do you get them involved if it's not their primary subject or primary interest? How do you share your vision and get them involved?
We try to educate and shows how important of the climate change, like, and invite everyone to know how important of the climate change and put in the policies of our school, and uh, everyone will have to do and enjoy it.
Bertine, I'm going to come to you next. Can you give us a tiny snapshot of what you're involved with today?
So I'm currently part of the TED Youth Countdown Council, which is, they just had an event and I was so glad that I went and had the opportunity to go, because I learned from so many inspirational leaders about their initiatives and how they're putting their climate initiatives into action. And I also was part of many breakout sessions where people were conversing about why exactly they are interested in this sort of area of work. And also something that I think I'm doing right now is that I'm actually pursuing education within this environmental sector. And I'm trying to become a sort of a asset to my country where they can use me to sort of address the emerging climate needs that we have in our nation.
What would you say to people listening if they are thinking, I want to learn to use my voice as well? What piece of advice would you give to them?
For me, it all just really plays with how you get yourself started. And I think that if you want to do something and you think it's small, I don't think you should think of it as small. You should probably just start with it, because wherever you start, especially if we're progressing towards a greener future, is definitely a start for anything. There's always this mindset that, but it's not enough. And I think that that's not true, because even if it's really small, you could start with it and then learn to grow with it. And then as the initiative grows, you can then extend that to others. And after you extend that to others, later you realize that it's not a small thing anymore, because your initiative has grown. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how small, it's the point that you're getting started.
Mathilde, I'm going to come to you next. Would you give us a little snapshot of what you're involved with today?
So what I'm involved with today is it's more on the policy level, trying to facilitate for those youth voices that we were talking about here earlier today, have facilitate for that we can actually get the opportunity to speak up for the current and the future generations, and all initiatives that our speakers here have mentioned today. So sit in the World YMCA Executive Committee, which you can see as the board of the whole World Alliance. And YMCA, many don't know that it's the largest youth movement in the world. It's more than 58 million people that is connected to the movement. And that's a huge opportunity. At the same time, we have a great responsibility to act on the needs in the world and make sure that we give youth ourselves that we get the tools to speak up and make sure that we are on the decision tables, but also out in the field and helping where it's possible. Like to have that opportunity, when you need to have the governance. Some people can just like boring stuff, but it's necessary to make the organization work. But then when you can use that opportunity that so many people are gathered to steer the movement in the future direction, that's one of the things I'm working with, to not go in detail on all the governance stuff.
So it feels like there's so much potential for change to make our voices heard. But what about on a day-by-day basis? I guess it doesn't always feel like that. It doesn't always feel like our voices are getting heard. How do you stay motivated and hopeful and inspired that our voices coming together will make a difference?
Very good question, Jo. And I don't have the answer to that. It goes up and down because there's nothing more depressing to me personally than to understand what actually the world not acting like we should do. We should just stop and make sure that the 1.5 degree is achieved. So, but at the same time, keeping up the motivation, and I'm optimistic. I'm not thinking about the bad side of it every day, because then no one will manage that. But to find someone that can remind you when you're actually not seeing any hope, having a local group, having online community. I mentioned Herman, you're from the YMCA, but we're here in a group where not everyone is connected to the YMCA. So it's more about connected to other young people that is really making a change. If it's locally, nationally, internationally, just try to remind ourselves that we really have an opportunity to take action now that will mean something for the world we're living in.
Thank you, Mathilde. Simangele, I want to come back to you. The people watching, they've listened to the stories, inspiring stories of what's going on, and they're thinking, yes, I want to do something. What would be the one piece of advice you would give to someone of what to do, but they don't know where to start?
I think I'll start by noting that it's common that when you see the bigger problem, you want to tackle the bigger problem, but perhaps they must then translate it to their local context first, and then ask themselves, from where I am currently, what is it that I can do? We can have a bigger environmental crisis, biodiversity loss, but where do I stay? In the village where I'm in, what is it that I can do? Then you start realizing, if in my village we have a nearby river that is polluted, perhaps that is where we start. Although the problem is bigger and is global, but there are steps at a local level that we can take. Of course, understand the bigger problem, reflect on it from your local context, and then see what is possible and mobilize fellow young people to do whatever that is small in the context that you're in.
Herman, I want to ask you the same question. Again, if there's people watching and they're thinking, wow, this issue is so big, but it's so important, and I want to get involved, but I don't know what to do. What would you say they should do?
I think if the thing did not go when how we expected, I think we keep try doing and try to find like a try to find the point, try to find the thing and solve it. Just keep doing and never give up from it.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you, Herman. I don't know about you, but I feel inspired. I feel encouraged about just a snapshot from 5 people around the world. Yes, doing amazing things, but actually all started somewhere, all with a little seed sown in them. And I think I'm going away thinking, how can I reflect on the space that I live in, my community? What can I do where I am? I want you guys to think about what you can do where you are, but also there is an opportunity to type in the comments and ask questions to the panel. And what more do you want to know from them and hear from them? But thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thanks for sharing today. But thank you for what you do for the environment. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you so much.